There we go.
Good morning. Welcome to the second of our two NOPBC IEP live sessions. More about the IEP. Kimberly, do you want to set the stage for folks?
Yeah, just to let everybody know, we are recording, so if that's something you're not comfortable with, go ahead and leave the meeting now, and the recording will be made available on the NOPBC website sometime in the early future. Again, this is the NOPBC IEP Session 2 workshop. We're going to keep everybody muted for now. And you can unmute yourself during question and answers. We'd also like to ask everybody to keep their video off for this presentation. During question and answers, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 if you're calling on a telephone, or hitting Alt-Y if you're on a PC, or Command-Shift on a Mac. Our speakers today, we have two parts of this workshop. The first part is going to be on assessments and accommodations with Carlton Walker and Casey West Robertson. And the second part of the workshop will be on negotiations with Melissa Riccobono and Penny Duffy. I'm going to hand it over to Carlton.
Welcome, and Casey, you're on it too, my friend. So we're going to be talking about best practices for accommodations, assessments, and service time. A little bit, well, Casey, if you can tell folks just a little bit about yourself, I'm going to tell them just a little bit about myself before we start.
Okay, I'm Casey West Robertson, and I'm a professor at Louisiana Tech in our Teaching Blind Students program. That's where we train teachers in a structured discovery method of teaching blind students. I am also a board member of the NOPBC, and we are thankful that you guys are here with us today to learn a little bit more. We're going to add on to our IEP session from yesterday.
And I'm Carlton N. Cook Walker. I have the honor of serving as NOPBC president. I'm an attorney, parent of a blind child, and also a certified teacher of blind students. Okay, now here's the trick. Can I make my slideshow move? Yes, I did it. Okay, so excited. We're going to be talking about accommodations versus modifications, assessments, and service time. Casey.
Okay, so let's talk about accommodations and modifications. This is very important for parents because lots of times the school personnel unintentionally will interchange the words accommodations and modifications, but they are very different and they have a very different impact, a great impact on your child's education. So let's talk about accommodations. Accommodations is what we want to see the most of, okay? This changes the presentation format. The response format may be changed, the test setting may be changed, the testing format may be changed, and time of test may be changed. The important thing is this does not change the curriculum. Your child is still getting the same curriculum that other students are getting, except they're getting it in a different format. For instance, maybe they're getting it in large print or they're getting it in Braille, but it changes the format, not the curriculum, okay? This is just intended to level the playing field so that your child can access the curriculum just like their sighted peers. Okay, now modifications is something very different, and this is a dangerous word if schools start to use the word modification. because once we change to modifications, we're changing the presentation formats, the response format, the testing setting, the testing format, the testing timing, and be careful, we might even be changing the test and going to an alternative assessment. This does change your child's curriculum. This means that your child will not be getting the same academic curriculum that sighted peers are getting. And if you want your child to be on an academic track, then for a graduation diploma, this will change that, because this changes the curriculum that they're getting, okay? And this also has a great impact on the student's disability. It's intended to change the curriculum, change the course of your child's education. So be very careful about accommodations or modifications.
Absolutely. Some examples of modifications we don't like seeing might include doing every other math problem. That's a concern because we're not getting the same kind of practice. It would be better to discuss with the teacher how many problems are needed for mastery. So or a worksheet, but so that instead of just cutting the blind kids amount, making sure that everybody has the right size amount and that everybody doesn't have twice as many problems to do. But sometimes modifications can actually be good. Example I used when I was teaching is word finds. Word finds do not have good research basis for sighted kids and don't for blind kids. You can't really, especially when it's diagonal or for from up down to up. You're not going to be using contractions probably. It can be kind of messy. So instead, I would often say, give my student the list of words from the word find, and we're going to write meaningful sentences or a paragraph. So I modified up for my kids, and that's great. Just blowing off the word find, you're not getting that interaction with vocabulary. So what are your thoughts, Casey?
Another one I see quite often in schools, and this one is kind of a scary one to me, is spelling words. They will give the Braille students 5 spelling words when they give everyone else 20 spelling words. And you have to think about your child is missing the opportunity to learn how to spell 15 words. You take those 15 words away from them, then they have 15 less words to use in their writing. They have 15 less words to use in their vocabulary. So they're actually getting a modification that they will call it an accommodation to shorten the assignment. But truly that is a modification because you're changing the academic outcome of your student.
Absolutely. And with spelling, this is a really important one. Uncontracted versus contracted Braille. It's my philosophy that the spelling teacher grades the uncontracted Braille. That's the spelling. The Braille teacher, me, I grade the contracted Braille. That's not part of the spelling grade. That's what I'm trying to teach a student. The actual letters, letter for letter, that's the regular ed teacher's job. So, because people say, oh, well, the kid has twice as many words to learn. No. It has 2 different ways to present them.
Right.
That's all.
Right. Very correct.
And next slide, Casey. Widely used accommodation.
Some of the widely used accommodations that you might see. Now remember, accommodations are based on the student's need. Every student is going to be different. I've never seen 2 Braille students that were the same at the same time. Every student is individualized. So we just added just a few here for you just so that you can get the idea of what accommodations are. For example, your child might need hard copy Braille. For anything that the students are getting in print, your child would have hard copy Braille. Notes of anything written on the board in Braille. This also is for low vision students as well. Anything that's written on the board, they have to have access to, so they might get a large print copy of those notes as well. A Braille display, early access to videos with audio description. That is a one that our teachers show lots and lots of videos now, and our students miss out on that. If they don't have early access and they don't have audio description, they miss out on those things. A screen reader, Braille textbooks, and extra time on assignments and assessments. These are just a few types of accommodations that your student may encounter.
Next slide, possible wording of an accommodation. Full disclosure, I'm pushing the envelope on this one. Most of the time it says, because Joni can't see well, she needs blah, blah, blah. Sometimes we get a little bit better due to visual impairment, Joni cannot access blah, 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 blah. Honestly, that's not the reality. It's due to the school's use of inaccessible materials, due to the school's use of inaccessible computers. That's really the truth. It's not a hill on which I would die at an IEP meeting, but I think it's really nice to come to the IEP meeting with this kind of wording. Not to make anybody embarrassed or defensive, but just to make us all understand the child's blindness isn't the problem. The child's inability to access what the school provides is the problem, and it's because of what the school chose to provide. No judgment on why they chose to provide it, but it's not the kid that's broken. It's the school's refusal to provide accessibility from the start. Now, I did include a third one, due to students' need to travel independently in an age-appropriate manner. Okay, that is not something the school isn't doing. That is a need related to the disability of blindness. But then I have, school will provide a long white NFB cane, minimum length, 63 inches, whatever the inches are, to student, comma, will allow student to use the long white cane throughout the school and take the cane home every night and throughout school break periods, comma, and will instruct all staff that they may not offer human guide or other travel-related assistance unless student requests that assistance. You might get pushback, but these are the kind of conversations you want to get started in the IEP meeting. So these can maybe help get those conversations going like they need to be. Assessments, the law, you got a lawyer, got to go to my law first. The Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, IDEA, is the law that sets forth all special education throughout this country. And it describes what assessments need to have, what evaluations need to have in order to be legal. They need to be selected and administered so as not to be discriminatory on race or cultural basis. Provided and administered in a language and form this is so important, most likely to yield accurate information. That's what we're looking for, accurate information on what the child knows and can do academically, developmentally, and functionally, unless it's not feasible to so provide or administer. 3, this is big, used for the purposes for which the assessments or measures are valid and reliable. That is vital. That is vital. 4, are administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel. And 5, administered in accordance with any instructions provided by the producer of such assessments. And the producers often do describe what kind of training is necessary for administration of it. Basics of assessments. Under the law, all areas of suspected disability must be evaluated. Choose which assessment based on information you're looking for. If we don't know what we're looking for, it's probably going to be difficult to find it. So before we start any assessments, we need to ask, why? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of the assessment? What are we doing? What are we doing it for? Oh dear, I'm sorry. And how are we going to do it? Casey, do you want to, I'm so sorry. Do you want to take the next, gracious, take the next couple while I attack my computer?
Yes, so adaptations. All needed adaptations must be made to any assessment used, okay? So we have to decide, how can our student access this assessment? So if it needs to be in Braille, it needs to be in Braille. If it needs to have extra time, it needs to have extra time. But no decision can be made based solely on assessments that are not normed upon and validated for blind and low vision students. And this is going to be a very powerful statement for parents in just a few minutes when we talk about the assessments that we use, because it's very powerful that the assessment has to be normed and validated. And the schools don't often count on you knowing that terminology. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do when given an assessment results is to say, is this assessment normed and valid for low vision and blind students? Okay, and if it's not, then you have a problem. So okay, so Carlton has it back up now. Good. Okay,
sorry about that. Golly.
That's okay. We can go to the next one.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to look at blindness specific assessments, okay? Assessments for Braille provision, orientation and mobility, functional vision assessment, assistive technology assessment, okay? Okay. The National Reading Media Assessment, the NRMA. Okay, remember those words that we just taught you guys, valid and normed? This is the only valid research-based assessment of reading media for blind and low vision students. Okay? Unfortunately, not every professional in the field is using the NRMA. Even though it's been out, it's had research behind it, 4 years of research, and it's been on the so-called market for 10 years. Not all professionals are using the NRMA, but it is the only valid and research-based. And as a parent, you have a right to ask for the NRMA. And they can't tell you that the cost of it is the reason they can't give the assessment, because it's free. It's totally free. And even as a parent, you can access the National Reading Media Assessment at let's back up, www.nfbnrma.org. A couple of other things, this assessment is the only one that is accessible to blind professionals in our field. This assessment is the only one that is fully disclosed to parents. Parents can go on and look at it, and it also takes in parents' comments and parents' observations during the assessment. There's videos on that website that parents can watch to show exactly how the assessment is given, so you'll know how what your student will be presented with. It's valid. Once I've said it again, I can't say it enough. It's valid and it's reliable. Another assessment for Braille provision is the Learning Media Assessment. Now, this is the one that you've probably heard that your TVI or your school says, we've done a learning media assessment on your child, okay? It's based on theory, and it's long been discredited in the field of education, okay? Not that it wasn't a good tool when it came out. I firmly believe in not criticizing other professionals. It was good for when it was good, okay? But we have something better now. We have the National Reading Media Assessment. So
Also, I want to point out that learning media assessments are not performed on any print readers. None. It's in learning media, again, a great idea a couple of decades ago. We were excited. We thought we were really going to be able to reach kids, sighted and blind. Guess what? The research shows it's not valid. That's the problem. Go ahead.
It's not, and nowhere in the Learning Media Assessment does it suggest Braille. It suggests large print. It suggests auditory but at no point does it say, look at your findings and your student will be a Braille reader. So that's another problem that I have with the learning media assessment. But it's not research-based. It's not valid for our students. It doesn't have Braille as a default.
Nope.
It doesn't. And we know from yesterday's session and what you've already learned, the IDEA says we have to prove that Braille is not necessary. Okay, so we have to assume that Braille is necessary until we can prove that it's not. Okay, it does not meet most of the federal requirements for IDEA. Okay, it just doesn't meet those. So the NRMA is a better assessment, and you have the right as a parent to ask for the NRMA. The learning media assessment also does not focus on reading and writing needs.
Exactly.
It focuses on how the student takes in information, and it doesn't take into consideration what your child is going to need for reading and writing, where the learning media assessment takes into how does this child access print or reading materials? How will they write? It also, the NRMA is the only one that takes into account future needs, such as IDEA says that future needs has to be considered, and it takes into account future needs. So if your child has a degenerative disorder and they're telling you not now, not now, not now for Braille, they still have too much sight, they still have too much sight, they still have too much sight. The NRMA takes into consideration that they have a degenerative condition and that their condition will be decreasing and their eyesight will be decreasing. So we have to start prepping now for that, not 5 years from now when they've lost so much sight that they're already behind, but we have to prepare now for that.
Right. And note the Braille provision, current, future reading, writing needs, nothing about audio. And learning media assessment, one of its recommendations is audio, not focused on reading and writing needs. Okay, other assessments that might be of use. We're going to have to kind of run through these quickly. The PowerPoint will be accessible, available on our website.
So let me go through them really quickly. The Oregon Project, this is what needs to be used for birth through 5 years old. It can also be used if your child has multiple handicaps and they're over 5 years old, but it's normed and validated through birth through 5 years old. And this will give you all the needs that your child needs. The Jerry Johns Reading Inventory will give you a reading level for your child, and that's something that you can access as a parent. The assessment for Braille literacy, the ABLES, it's more of, it can be used as an assessment, but it's a tracking process too. It's a progress monitoring tool. So you do the assessment, you see where the child is at. These are available to parents as well. Very, very parent friendly. And I want to mention one thing about the ABLES, it does not mention pre-Braille. It mentions emergent literacy. We talked about pre-Braille yesterday and how those terms are old. We need to get rid of them. The ABLES talks about emergent literacy. You also have an ECC checklist. A lot of students that are getting Braille and O&M, they're missing out on the other ECC, the expanded core curriculum goals, okay? And that is a checklist that you can use there. The orientation and mobility assessment, this is another assessment that's been normed and validated for orientation and mobility. It was developed by the Louisiana Tech University. It's used to determine if students need orientation and mobility. The great thing about this one is any teacher or parent can do the screener. It comes with a screener, and you go through and you make a checklist, and if they score, it calculates it for you. If they score up to a certain number on it, then it recommends that a professional orientation and mobility instructor be called in to do a formal assessment. So if you think your child needs O&M, you can take the NOMA, and you can do the screener, the checklist for it, and then you can take it to the school and show that an O&M professional needs to come in and do the assessment. Okay, a lot of O&M assessments are just ad hoc assessments. It's a orientation and mobility instructor comes in, they watch the student walk in their familiar environment, and then they make a subjective decision of whether the student needs orientation and mobility or not.
Always ask, research-based, validated, demand that information. They have to give it to you. I'm going to go a little bit quickly now just because we're going to eat into negotiation time, but functional vision assessment. Again, when we're doing assessment, what's the purpose? Is our purpose maximizing the child's vision or maximizing the child? And so just make sure that your IEP team understands that you want to maximize your child, not necessarily the vision. And I hate to tell you, it pains me, teachers in training are still being taught vision maximization.
Yes, they are.
That's just the goofiest thing on earth. I cannot imagine. We don't teach spelling maximization. We teach the child to spell. We don't want to teach the child to see. That's goofy. We have so many great tools otherwise. It is widely used in the field, but it is not required under federal law. Some states do require it, however, unfortunately. Well, I should editorializing. But again, keep the focus on the whole child, not just vision. Functional vision is not enough. Any use of a vision must be effective, efficient, and sustainable, EES. Assistive technology assessment.
Or anything like that? Or do they have it
Please
over there
not,
to wipe down
please
those
mute
chairs?
yourself, sir, please. Thank you. Assistive technology assessments. There are definitions in federal law. We talked about those yesterday. I look at it, I go from technology to teach-nology. Teaching should always come first. Technology must serve the student's need, not vice versa. And you'll often see a set framework, student, environment, task, tools. When done well, it's a great assessment because it's looking at needs in different environments for different tasks and maybe different tools for those. That's great. Service time assessments, very quickly. For regular education skills, reading, writing, math, etc., look at the service time provided to non-disabled students. Most kindergartners get 3 to 5 hours a day of reading and math instruction. Schools balk at 30 minutes a day for Braille. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Print readers have had print in their lives, literally their entire lives. They are surrounded by print in the classroom. All of their peers are learning print. All of their teachers, everybody in the school building is print literate. Their parents are hopefully print literate. People in their community are print literate. But we have a Braille student who doesn't have any of those advantages. Often the only Braille learner in school, sometimes a district, and the only person who actually knows Braille unless the teacher is there. The child is. So you're saying that they need 1/6 the time? Explain that to me. But for blindness-specific service time calculation tools, for Braille, I recommend this Delphi study, Assuring Quality Literacy Instruction for Students Who Are Blind. It was done in 2005. Word of caution, with regard to keyboarding skills, it says they should begin at 2nd and 3rd grade. That was great 15 years ago. Now, as we just spoke earlier, 3 to 4 to 5 years old, honestly. And the impact of Braille reading skills, there's a great NFB article here. And for orientation mobility, the NOMA that Casey talked about already has one built in. You're going to have others. Schools are going to bring others to you. They rely to differing degrees on physical attributes like visual acuity and visual field rather than student need. I don't know of anything else that does this. We look at the need that we want to fulfill. We don't look at physical attributes. And these include vision services, severity rating scales that used to be called Michigan severity scales, Colorado severity rating scales, the visual impairment scale of service intensity of Texas, Visit. That's one of the newer ones. It's a little less physical diagnosis dependent, but it still has that, and it's just goofy. We don't do that in education. Our blind students deserve no less. Casey.
Okay, just one thing on the rating scales. A lot of TVIs use this to manage their caseload. So they will look at how many students they have, and then they will fill out this visual rating scale and limit the services per student. So it's not a very good tool if it's not used properly anyway. And you don't get the full amount of Braille, which we recommend 5 days a week for 60 minutes a day. You don't get that with any of these rating scales unless you're totally blind. So it's very, very skewed to help the teacher manage her time and not what the student actually needs.
And again, like in PE class, we don't vary the length of that depending on how short or tall a child is. We have a PE lesson to teach, we teach it. We need to look at the need, the technology need, the O&M need, the Braille need, and then we provide the service time. Thank you much. I'm going to stop my share.
And this PowerPoint will be available to you guys on our website so that you will have all of our information to ask us questions and things and to have the PowerPoint to review.
Absolutely. Okay, I see one question. Does keyboarding scales mean QWERTY keyboards or Braille keyboard? Keyboarding would typically be the QWERTY, the 26 letter keyboard, but Braille skills, Braille writing skills, I want the SITS key. I want the child to use the SITS key on the Perkins, on the refreshable Braille display, and / note taker, and on the slate. So would you agree, Casey?
Yes, yes. I think every student needs the 6 key on the things that you mentioned, but they need the QWERTY keyboard so that they can move to a computer later, so that they can go into any computer that has a screen reader and be able to have typing skills. Because remember, typing skills is a different skill from Braille skills. So when we're doing the 6 key devices, we're working on Braille skills and Braille writing, but typing is a different skill that they're going to have to know. And frankly, the devices that are just for blind people, the 6 key technologies, they're always going to be behind the computers where with the QWERTY keyboard that you can access more technology on.
Right. And can do more things, the right tool. And there have been other sessions at convention and before convention, I'm sure after convention, a lot of kids come in. They're great Braille readers. They have their note takers, 6 key entry note takers. They don't know keyboarding. Well, that has limited them so much. It's not either or, it's yes, both, yes. How do we find out what rating scales the TVI used? Ask. Great question. Ask what assessments. You have the right. And in fact, any evaluation I use lists every tool I've used.
Yes. Yes.
And if it doesn't, you have the right to ask. And do ask and demand it. Ask for it in writing, because there are federal guidelines that they have to use tools of a certain quality, and you have a right to know what they've used. And if it's, I pulled it off my shoe this morning, well, you know, that's good to know. It's good to know.
And it's always good to ask them, was the service time based on my child's needs, or was it based on a rating scale or a caseload? Yeah. It's good to know that.
Yeah, and for the regular educators, those administrators, tie back. How much time do you spend teaching kindergartners to read? How much time do you spend with the regular ed kids? How can you justify so much less for mine?
Okay. Carlton, Sanya has had her hand raised for.
Okay. Yes.
Sanya Nima.
Sandra? Okay. There is a question, can we demand new assessments? What I would do is review and say, I've learned
this is Sonia.
Okay, go ahead.
I got it now. Mm-hmm. I got it.
Sure.
By the way, don't mean to correct you, but my name is actually Sonia instead of Sanya.
Okay.
I apologize.
It's okay. But my question was that, well, two of them. Firstly, I know that this IEP is based on a lot of like parents self-advocating, but also can students advocate these things too? Because there's a rule saying that in my state that when you're 14 or older, you can be in the IEP. And right now I'm 17 and I have been in the IEP meetings. So I was asking that can students also advocate for these accommodations?
Yes, and in fact, it's not that a student must wait till 14 or 16 in some states to participate. The student must be invited when reading that transition age of 14 in most states, 16 in a few. A student may attend an IEP meeting at any age.
Thank you. I wish that happened with me, but unfortunately it happened when I was 14.
Yeah.
And the second question was that the online, this year, now that because of COVID, my parents have chosen online schooling so that I won't have to go out in school and get everyone sick or get the coronavirus. And so are some of these accommodations may have changed because of online? For example, like Braille, like could it be possible that these accommodations could change in online schooling?
Okay, so you want to take that, or I'll take it, either one?
Absolutely. Some of your accommodations may change. Now, hard copy Braille, the school still has to provide that. If that's an accommodation you have, they still have to provide that. Now, whether it's a drop off at your front door procedure or a mail to you ahead of time, it's whatever your parents and you and work out with the school. But some of your accommodations may change because of the online schooling. And what I would suggest, if you would review your IEP and then see how the online school is going to work. And if you see things that you need that's not in that IEP, that you would request a new IEP meeting and then sit back down with the team and say, this is what I'm going to have to access online school, and then new accommodations be written.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Because
especially, just a second, especially for that hard copy Braille, especially for kids 12, 13 and up, you should be knowing how to use an embosser. It may be that your IEP needs to provide for an embosser and Braille paper at your home, training for you in Duxbury or Braille Blaster, and receipt of Braille ready printable files, because that's a transition skill you'll need to know. And so, do we have another question?
We had a question in a private chat. If a child has gone from an IEP to a 504, should they stay with the 504 or go back to the IEP?
Well, do you want to have your educational rights or no? I mean, seriously, a 504 plan can be changed by the school itself, but without you. It doesn't have to be in writing. And I don't understand why schools want to go to those anyway, because they don't get special ed money for them. So I don't get it. But if your child qualifies for an IEP, like we talked about yesterday, it's actually a violation for the school not to offer an IEP. Now, you could refuse an IEP. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is a violation for the school to refuse to provide an IEP if a child is qualified, and that's called child fine violation. So I would, if it was me, I'm going back to an IEP. Casey?
I would always vote for our blind kids to have IEPs, because the parent has a voice in that meeting, and there's certain things, there's just different things that can be provided, such as we talked yesterday about extracurricular activities, non-academic activities. All those need to be provided under an IEP. So I always recommend that students with blindness or low vision stay with IEPs instead of 504s.
And on 504s, you don't have any right to instruction. You don't have the right to Braille. You don't have the right to assistive technology. It's just reasonable accommodation. It's a much, much lower standard.
Carlton, Oh, go ahead, Casey.
Okay, I think we are running into the next speaker's time. So what we'll do is we can let them speak, and then we're still going to be on here. And then all of the questions, just hold your questions, or if you think of some during that, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And then maybe we'll have time at the end to answer a lot of questions between us and from the next speakers.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. The second part of the session is on negotiation strategies, and Penny Duffy, first Vice President of the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children, and Melissa Riccobono will be presenting this portion of the session. I'm going to hand it over to Penny Duffy now.
Hello, my name is Penny Duffy, and I am very pleased to be able to speak with you. I'm actually going to talk about what I consider the keys about being prepared for negotiation and strategies. Is really 4 areas: knowledge, collaboration, goals, and IEP process. I didn't create really cool slides like Carlton and Casey did. So I'm going to focus first on, first I'm going to talk about who am I? Why am I talking to you about negotiation? I am a mom to Abby. Abby's a 16-year-old rising high school junior. And I'm really focusing on this. I'm a mom. I'm a mom first. I don't have a special degree. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a lawyer. I think I really believe strongly with the right tools, most parents can be the best advocate for their child. And really, I'm talking about how to prevent you getting to that point where you need to bring in a lawyer, for instance. And this is about building that relationship with the school district during the years your child needs it. Now, obviously, once that relationship degrades and you need a lawyer, don't hesitate to have to bring that in. My expertise is in the area for pre-needing the lawyer. So I want to make sure it was really clear. I'm going to be talking about how my daughter's 16 and we haven't had to bring in legal any legal work yet. But I truly believe strongly that that parents are the best advocate for their child. And one of the big keys to be able to negotiate is to have that knowledge. And one of the best ways that I have gotten the knowledge I've received about IEPs and to being able to being knowledgeable in the room has been the NOPBC and the National Federation of the Blind. And that is key. We have resources on our website and future reflections. I also think it's really important that you understand your state's special education rules. Every state's a little different and every state will have rules. Most of them publish them. And it's really important for you to figure out how to find that. Usually you can find it on your state's DOE website. Also, every single state has something called a parent training center. Some of them, even big cities, have their very own parent training centers. And this is something I'm very passionate about. Now, mind you, parent training centers are not expertise in blindness. Your expertise in blindness is going to be the NFB and the NOPBC. But to understand special education law and to understand your state law, your PTI can be a very key member of helping. They usually have free trainings and they have great resources. My state PTI is wonderful. I participated in an 11-week volunteer IEP volunteer advocacy training. So it was intensive. I know my state laws in and out. And I'm able to help other family members, which I'm very passionate about. I just put in the chat box how to find your own PTI and the website to do that. It's a federally funded part of IDEA resource. And it's not a lot of people actually know it existed. And I think it's a really, I think it's a very helpful thing to utilize. And so I think, and that goes with the whole knowledge is power. And also you can use our Facebook group. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask. And you know what? You may have heard something maybe 3-4 years ago. Ask again. Things change. Like I thought I knew everything, and then my daughter ended up transitioning from middle school to high school, and there was a whole new things to learn. So you're never going to know everything, but after a while, I'm not studying the other people on my IEP teams. I truly felt I was one of the most knowledgeable people, especially when it relates to blindness, on the table on my IEP team. It just takes time, and I really feel knowledge can really be a big key. So if you know things, it's easier to negotiate. One of the big things I have done, and I really think this is try to be collaborative, and try to, you're not going to be your IEP team members' best friends. Don't try to do that. Some people say bring snacks. I'm really just focusing on building that relationship. One of the big things is I have built a really good working relationship with my daughter's teacher for the blind and visually impaired. One of the tools we've used over the years has been, this is a non-official meeting, is we collaborate before she submits her draft to the person who manages the IEP before the meeting. And so we talk before, and I say, this is what I would like to see in the IEP, because most of my concerns are dealing with my daughter's blindness. And so the TVI is her key point of contact to get that added, the easy way to get it added to the IEP. If I can cut it off at the pass and not have to bring it up at the meeting and get it added in that way, I find it kind of makes everything go smoother. If I can get her on my team, that seems to really help. So we usually have a meeting. Believe it or not, we talk for even over an hour. I just share all the things I'd like to see, my vision. And you know, not everything ends up in the IEP, and that's okay. And to the next point is, you might get a draft IEP at your meeting. It is a draft, big D in the draft. It is nothing. You literally could take the IEP and rip it apart. It is a tool to help manage time and to help manage how everyone is working at the meeting. It is not the way that this is going to look like at the end. And I think that's really important. Sometimes parents feel intimidated. This is what the school is saying they're going to do. No, the part of the way the IEP process is supposed to work is you're supposed to collaboratively work together to build it. It's just that it takes a lot of time. Many schools use the draft as a way to manage time. So what I always do is every single year, I have 1 or 2 key goals that I really feel are important to add to the IEP. And if they aren't included in that draft, I make sure that I have it written down. I don't show it to anybody. And when it comes my turn to talk, I make sure we get it, or I work as hard as I can to get it. I always make sure I have something to back it up. What is the evidence I say that I need to have to have this done? What is it? A piece of technology? Is it a new service we need to add? What is my reasoning behind it? Not because I think it's cool and should be added. There has to be evidence behind it to be included. And I kind of call those the big ask. And sometimes you're going to get resistance for the big ask. And sometimes I think a lot of times parents know what that resistance is going to happen, but just be prepared. There's been a couple of big asks that has taken a couple of years for me to even put into place. I've known technology-wise what I wanted into place, so I started laying the seeds down for that early on. And so I would say, I knew Abby needed a computer. Well, I needed to convince 2 people on this, not just the IEP team that Abby needed a computer with JAWS. I needed to convince my daughter too. And this is because I really consider my daughter a huge asset on the IEP team. And if she's not on board and she's not going to be, so it would take, I started working on this beginning in middle school to make sure she had that computer go into high school. Those big asks may take time, or you may be able to really get them resolved in the meeting, but have that written down, that one thing. And it's okay to lose a couple of little things along the way, but the focus is on your child's outcome and to make sure your child gets the best scenario. So sometimes making sure you get what you really need and not that big wish list of everything that you want. And I think that sometimes we get lost in, like, oh, everyone says you should have this, this, and this. No, focus on what your kid needs. And one of the big tricks I've learned is let their ideas, your ideas become their ideas. One of the biggest issues we had was the Chromebook. There was a tool that was added to our district when my daughter started middle school in 7th grade. And it was that was going to be the primary device for high school. I knew with my relationship with the NOPBC that was not going to be the best tool for her. I had done a lot of research. I already knew. And so I had initially said, I'm concerned about this. But I said, you know what? Let's try it out, because it was going to be in 8th grade. And I says, I knew that the Chromebook, because it was partially accessible. My concern was the access to the was for the Braille refreshable Braille display, and there was a lot of issues with that. And I wanted my daughter to learn how to use a Chromebook, and I thought it would be a good way to do it. But I also wanted her to make sure she had everything in place so she'd have a computer in high school. It may not be the best choice, but it was the best choice to make sure my daughter got the tools she needed. So they tried the Chromebook. They tried to solve all the solutions with the Braille display. They troubleshooted it. They were on hours with tech supports. And before the end of 8th grade, they had ordered her computer with JAWS. So they realized that that was the best tool for her. And it was, and may not, and she wasn't damaged by using a Chromebook, because you know what? If the computer is broken, she has a Chromebook as a backup. It's not the end of the world. But I knew that she needed to have a laptop with JAWS in Office, and that was what I know she needed. And I can tell you now, as an 11th grader, when she's been using those tools in high school, it has been beyond important. Just to throw that out there. And I also want to make sure that you always think that, like, don't fight for all the little things. Sometimes I think our feelings get hurt on valid reasons, like they didn't make something accessible or something. Try to hold. I'm not saying don't allow your child to not get accessible materials. What I'm saying is don't go to the IEP team, the IEP meeting with a big long list of all the things that failed in the past year. Focus on the things that your child needs and what they want, because if you start like throwing these negatives at the team, they're going to lock down. And the point is we want to make sure that they agree with you. And I think that's one of the big keys. Is I think sometimes we get, every single time I get, my daughter gets a worksheet that's in a PDF, that's a picture that she can't access, it hurts me, because they are hurting my child. But if we work through it and we're able to make it work, I try not to how that hurt me unless it continually be a problem, and that's a much bigger issue. One of the big things that I think to use in the negotiation process is the IEP process. It has specific tools that parents can use in a negotiation strategy, and I'm going to just talk very, very quickly about 3, so then we can hear from the wonderful Melissa. I'm going to talk first. Parental concerns. Make sure you include one. Make sure you include them. Have it be what you're concerned about, but also think about future needs. Like I knew we were changing statewide assessments. I mentioned that in the parental concerns, and we were able to make sure she had the technology that was needed for the statewide assessment. And also sometimes if the same concern is shown year after year, it can be something that is shown if you ever do have to go to a legal avenue. It can be shown that the school district wasn't listening to you. Because if they really should listen to the parental concerns, and if they're not just say, I'm concerned about this, and it's something valid, it really should be addressed in the IEP. Prior written notice is a great tool, because it's the school telling you the why. They should be, every single decision an IEP team makes, remember, you're part of the IEP team, but every single decision an IEP team makes, the school, the LEA, has to produce something called a prior written notice. That is, and they have to say, we didn't give your child Braille because of this reason. We didn't give your child this technology device you asked for this reason. And it's the why and the what, and it's very, very important. And what you can do is you actually can take that, find evidence, and ask for another meeting and say, I disagree. We discussed this last time, and I found these reasons why we need to discuss it again. Don't be afraid to bring something up that was a no beforehand. And the very last thing I wanted to discuss was making sure at your meeting that the decision maker is at the meeting. I think sometimes you might just have the case manager there, and if you're talking about a big ask that they know that they can't answer, you may have to reconvene, because then in reality you don't have an IEP team if the decision maker is not there, because sometimes they might have to ask their big boss. Well, that big boss should be at the meeting. Decisions should not be happening in a back room, and should be happening at the meeting, so you can speak why you feel this accommodation, this device, this service is needed, and they should. If the person who can say yes or no isn't there, you need to make sure that happens. And sometimes it usually can be who is there, but when it's a big ask, like you're asking for a program that's going to cost a lot of money, make sure that it's the person there, or acknowledge that you might get to the meeting and they might go, we're going to have to ask them. Well, then you say, okay, I can see that we're going to need to reconvene. Please make sure they're here. Because if you're telling me you can't answer yes or no, we don't have an IEP team. So that is very important. Those are pretty much what the things I go by. And I think I may have just gotten cut off. No, I think I'm still on. Those are the things that I have found very helpful for me. Again, I'm just a mom, but I really believe we all can be a child's best advocate. And I really feel that when we work collaboratively with the school can be a really good tool. But also I acknowledge that sometimes it can get messy. And maybe sometimes we can just use little tricks to help that happen. I'm going to pass it off now to Melissa because she's fantastic. And I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, you were great. And actually, you said most of the things that I was going to say. I think the only other things, very briefly, are that you should definitely figure out. Penny talked a lot about having a great working relationship with her child's TVI. Sometimes that's going to be your best advocate or your best partner at that table. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's going to be the classroom teacher. Sometimes you're going to be really blessed and you're going to have the whole team that's really on your side and really takes what's in the best interest truly of your child to heart. Sometimes that's not the case. But try to figure out who at that table is your ally and really try to help that relationship along and really have those conversations with the people that you believe are really on your side and are, I don't know exactly how to say it, but kind of see things your way, that are practical, that are willing to work with you. Sometimes you're just not going to sway certain other people. And so it's really important just to make sure that you're working as closely with the ones that you can. And then hopefully there'll be strength in numbers and you can somehow get those others to come around in some way. I think the other thing to remember is you are, Penny, don't ever say you're just a parent. You are a parent. You are the one person at that table that knows your child best and has your child's very best interests at heart because they are your heart, if that makes sense. Everybody else might say that, and I do believe that it's true. I think there are teachers that care very, very much about our kids, but they can't care like a parent does. And it's not an accident that you're at that table. And so don't ever sell yourself short. You are at that table for the most important reason, and that reason is you love your child and you absolutely want to work and find what is the best thing for your child so your child can soar. And that's really important. And so don't sell yourself short. Try not to get intimidated. And I know Casey told yesterday about having an advocate with you. And I think that is so important. Have an advocate with you. Have somebody there that's also really caring about your child and can really help to get the conversation back on your child. The only other thing that I will say, because I know we definitely want to make sure that we have as much time for questions as we can. Penny talked about the big asks, and I think the big asks are really, really important. I think that you also need to make sure that you're willing to compromise when it makes sense. A school can't be every single thing to your child. I wish it could, and it should do more than it does often, but sometimes you need to compromise and you need to figure out what are your big asks that you're certainly not going to back down from, and what are the ones that maybe you can compromise and then you can figure out other ways to get your child some other skills that they need. And maybe that's, partnering with a parent division in your state and making sure that your child has access to really positive blind adult role models. Maybe it's having somebody that volunteers to help your child in Braille over the summer. I don't know what it would look like. Maybe it's having your child attend one of our wonderful summer programs. But really figuring out, knowing that there just are certain things that your school is not going to bend to, most likely, no matter what you do and how hard you try. And that by trying that sometimes and feeling like you're just beating your head against that wall, that's not healthy for you, that's not healthy for your child, and that is really a recipe for disaster. And so figuring out other ways for your child to get some of the things, not everything, because you don't want to have the school not do any part of their job. And that's a really tough one for me. I, as a blind parent, know a lot of things and am able to do a lot of things with my child. And I have to remind myself, you know what, this should not be my job as their parent. This should really be the school's job. And so really figuring out in your own head, working with your advocate, figuring out what's, what is the thing that you're going to ask for and stay firm on no matter what, and what things you might be willing to compromise about because you could get your child the resources maybe in a different way. I think that's what I have that Penny didn't say. And so I'd love to have questions about any part of this presentation.
Oh, there are a couple hands.
Hi, Penny. My name is Jasmine Polite. I'm not a blind parent, but I am a blind child of a parent, and I've had IEPs many times, and I'm studying to be a Braille teacher. And I was wondering, from my experience with, me having IEPs when I was younger, because I went to a blind school, went to the Florida School for the Blind, and public school too, first before I went to the blind school in Florida. But how can I, as a blind person myself and an educator for the blind, what can I tell parents from my experience of a blind child about how important IEPs are?
Well, thank you. I believe your name is Jasmine. I think the important thing is just to make sure that that parent feels empowered and that they know that what they have to say is important. And if you have guidance that you can provide, please, it's always good to say that. I think that's probably.
Thank you.
I think we have a hand up from Garrett Mooney.
Yeah, Carl. My question was related to the rating scale that you guys talked about earlier, with how teachers use that to kind of manage their caseload. I mean, we're all aware that there's a TBI shortage across the country. So how do you, with a school that does have a shortage of TBIs, and you have TBIs trying to handle, well over what they should be handling for a caseload, I mean, what do you do in a conflict like that? Because in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to deal with it, but it is reality. So how do you deal with that in the school district where they're saying, well, we just don't have the staff to give your child this much, to give her this much time? Can we, if we're giving her, let's say an hour a day every day, can we compromise it, 3 days a week at an hour at a time? Because we don't have the TBIs to do it. What do you think?
Okay. They're not giving her anything. They are legally required to provide educational services. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful that they look far enough ahead and hired enough people for the print readers. We cannot reward their failure to do so for Braille readers by saying, oh, you poor little fellas, you don't have to do it now. That's not appropriate. They can contract. We have some fabulous TBSs, teachers of blind students, like Casey. We have Treva, Chelsea, Stephanie, Jackie. I'm not sure who else on the call. I'm sure we have many others. We have some great teachers that can contract with. My blind child, all accessible technology services that she got that were actually useful were done via distance. So it's quite doable. And federal law is really, really clear. And of course it has to be. If they could get away with saying we don't have the staff, will they ever have the staff?
Yeah. No, it's true. Okay, so your advice
Yeah,
hold their feet, hold their feet to the fire.
yeah, well, but kindly, and say, yeah,
Yeah.
we understand. Here are some resources. It's always great to come with
Yes.
something
Yeah.
to the table. Here's some great resources. And I like to praise what they're doing. Mrs. Smith has, I've heard so many things, great things about her first grade class, and I want my son to be able to really get that great teaching Mrs. Smith offers. Please, we have to work together so that he can. So what are they going to say? Oh, no, Mrs. Smith, she's not.
I think too that it's really important to bond with other parents that are in your district if you can. So this is really where getting involved in a parent division in your state can be super helpful, or getting a group of parents together in your state, because you might know that there's a shortage. Other parents might or might not know that. And so the more people that you can have sort of holding their feet to the fire and talking to the supervisors, the powers that be, to say, hey, we really need a solution. It doesn't always work. And now with COVID, it's a little messy. But I think that's really important as well, that you, there's strength in numbers. And so if you know that there's other blind kids in your school district, I think that's really important to kind of gather with them and say, do you guys think this is good? Do you think that the service is enough? Or, you know, because there's been a shortage for a long time, and Carlton's right that it won't get better unless, and it still might not get better, but it certainly won't get better if no one ever says anything. And it certainly will get better faster, hopefully, if more people than one person say things.
And COVID, go ahead.
I think I would add to that too. Melissa is exactly right. Joining with other parents. And lots of times our schools don't intend to neglect our students. Lots of times they just don't know. They can't think outside the box. So when parents come to them and say, okay, we need more time and we understand that there's a shortage, but we also have a solution. You can do X, Y, and Z through distant learning, and we think that it's time to contract someone outside of that. I just worked with a school district over the last year and a half, and we did a lot of distance learning for this child. And they realized the money that they were paying in distant learning versus what the child was getting from the one TVI that they had for the entire district. All of a sudden, they had time and money to hire an additional TVI. So this child's going to have their own TVI, and that helps the entire district out, because now there'll be 2 TVIs in this school district. I also recommend asking them to announce to their teachers to find a teacher, raise your own teacher, find a good reading teacher, a good special ed teacher that would be interested, because your child's going to be there from kindergarten through 12th grade. And this is a great position that a teacher could do online courses. We have online courses through Louisiana Tech University, and we teach students all over the United States online through online methods. And then they would be able to teach your child. So as an incentive, raise your own teacher. Find a teacher that would be willing to go through the coursework.
And absolutely, couldn't agree more. About COVID, it actually may be opening up a couple of more solutions. One, there's no more travel needed. Teacher doesn't have to go from school to school to school, probably, if you're doing online. So that's more time in the teacher's day. My supervisor, when I was teaching, it killed him how much time I spent on the road. So you think it kills you, it kills me, because I couldn't teach kids while I'm driving down the road. Also, if we're doing distance learning, how about some peer learning opportunities? How about having some Braille instruction for 3 kids at once who are at a similar level? And if each kid's getting 3 hours once a week, we can give those kids, that's 9 hours, and we can give those kids 2 hours, 5 days a week, 10 hours, because we've saved the driving time and the one-on-one time. So think outside the box.
Karen has a question. Karen P, I know I'll get the last name wrong.
Karen Polnitz? Okay, maybe we'll move to Donna, and then Karen, when you come back, we can get you.
Thanks. My question is there research to support the idea that Braille learners should not be pulled out for Braille instruction during language arts time? It seems like this happens to kids a lot, and it robs kids of much needed phonics, spelling, and other language arts instruction that is applicable to both print and Braille readers. And I actually found one source just recently to support this. It's through the NFB site, through the Journal of Blindness Innovation and Research, Volume 3, Number 2 from 2013. But I was wondering if you know of any other research or sources that could support this.
I'll let Casey talk about the research, but from my point of view, it's a law thing. It's a free appropriate education thing, free appropriate public education, and most or many Braille teachers are not all duly certified in maybe elementary ed. If they are, even if they are, it still is important for that peer learning. So I think we should pull children out as little as possible and try to do before school and after school before our pullout, and then push in to that language arts. So to my mind, I don't know about I haven't looked at the research if there is any, but from a legal point of view, if your child's not getting that regular ed language arts instruction because he's being pulled out, then he's not getting a free appropriate public education, and that's a problem.
Carlton, I missed the research question. Can you ask again? Can you tell me what she asked?
Yeah, Donna asked if there's research indicating that it is deleterious to pull children out of language arts for Braille instruction.
I don't know that there's any research out there that would give you that information. I do know there is a article that is in the publisher's hands. It's waiting to be published. That I wrote with some research on how to keep your child in the general language arts curriculum and teach them Braille at the same time. And I don't have a date of publication. I know it has been sent out to reviewers, and we're just waiting on it to be published like any day. But I don't know of any other research that would help you. And I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't.
I'm going to ask Karen had put in the chat that she was trying to unmute, and my little mouse doesn't want to work for me. Can you unmute, Karen, or maybe you can type your question in the chat box if you can't.
Oh, yay, I'm unmuting now. Yay. Okay, so I was typing it up, but okay. So would LCB be the specific resource that we suggest to a school or TBI who says, I simply don't have the time to do everything you're asking?
I think Casey can give you some contacts. I could give you some contacts, and we might be developing some other resources for you.
So, I think,
okay, and then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I had just put in the chat, for those of you that are wanting a resource list, I've been compiling a resource list of teachers that are teaching distant learning, and you can email me at caseywest94@hotmail.com. And yes, I do have a LaTeX email, a professional email, but this one comes to my phone. I can just do it faster. So it's caseywest94@hotmail.com. I'm a creature of habit. But I can get you that list. Also, with it coming from a university, and we can put letterhead on it and things like that, sometimes it helps schools realize that these are
muted.
Okay, so if we put it on letterhead, then it comes from a university and it's on letterhead, then the schools will be more apt to take it, knowing that these people are accredited and they're official teachers.
Okay, Oh, shoot. My other question flew out of my brain. Oh, with the information that has been going on the Facebook page with the Association of Education and Rehabilitation for the Blind and Visually Impaired, is there any way we can find out if our specialists who are working with our kids are associated with that, or with what is the other accreditation member?
AER is not a teacher accreditation. It's only an O&M accreditation.
Okay.
Well, it's not even AER, it's ACV REP.
Okay.
Teachers are only through your state Department of Education, but what you'll want is the PDR, you're vice president of it, Casey, National Certification Board for Blindness.
National Blindness Professional Certification Board. National Blindness Professional Certification Board. And we are the ones that administer the NCUEB, which is the National Certification in Unified English Braille. We administer the NOMC, which is the National Orientation and Mobility Certification. And we also have a rehab teaching certification. And you would just have to ask your teachers which certification they have. Do they have one through AER, which is give me the acronym.
It's Association of Education and Rehab Professionals for the Blind and Visually Impaired, but the AER itself doesn't have any accreditation.
No.
They are partnered with ACV REP or ACV REP, and I'm not sure what that stands for, and they have, they call it an AT certification, don't get me started. They have an orientation and mobility certification of sorts, vision rehab, and maybe some others, but they do not have it for teaching Braille. They do not have education that is through every state's Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you.
For us, 11 has a question. Give it a few more seconds.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. So my question was around distance learning and IEPs. So for my son, literally, and I'm sure most moms are in the same situation if you work, I need to sit with him to help him through the coursework. And it's 2 to 3 hours a day that I need to take off work to do that. I'm just wondering what resources there are out there and how you would structure an IEP to help get those resources.
Carlton here, it pains me because what's happened, and this is for all parents, you have been forced into the role of an unpaid paraprofessional or working for the school district for nothing. And you didn't even want that role. I think it's something to talk to the IEP team about. They could pay you for that service. If there's a family friend or somebody, maybe they could pay that person, or a grandparent or aunt or uncle, maybe they could pay that person to provide that service. I would actually rather do that than paying the parents, simply because kids don't always listen to their parents, or at least mine didn't. Still don't. Other possibilities are perhaps a paraprofessional also online. So there's the instructor teaching, but then there's also the para trying to keep the child on task. Now, some teachers, I mean, it depends on the kid, it depends on the teacher on what's necessary, but it may be an IEP team decision, because the school should not be relying on you to do it. If the teacher should be doing as much as he or she can, and if the teacher can't, then the school needs to provide you that support in some manner.
Yeah, so they're only doing 1 hour Zoom class a week, and the rest is all online. So there's no help.
So it's not the Zoom class that's the problem. It's that the materials, are the materials inaccessible, the online class?
Yes, they're all online, but and they gave a tiny little Chromebook, which obviously does not work. So we have it hooked to a big monitor, but even with the large monitor, it's very hard for him to concentrate for more than a few minutes, and he can't read. So you have to basically sit there and read it to him. And they've said, well, there is an immersive reader on there, but the immersive reader doesn't read everything. It just reads some things. So,
and he's not reading. Yeah, it sounds like he needs a Braille provision assessment, because it sounds like Braille may be helpful for him and he'll need Braille instruction, but he also needs accessible materials. They need to be efficient, effective, and sustainable. So it sounds like what they're using is not necessarily the best. May I ask what state you're in?
California.
California. You have a fabulous affiliate president in Tim Elder, and you have a fabulous parent of blind children president in Jeanette Jones. Please contact them. Contact me, NOPBCPres@gmail.com. So we can hook you in with them, because the problem isn't your child, it's the fact that the school is using inappropriate materials, sadly.
Right. Can you repeat that email address real quick?
Yes, NOPBCPRES, so NOPBCPres@gmail.com.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. And that's where, well, the next person comes up, that's where we have to say, what's the problem? Is the problem that the kid can't sit still? Okay, that's fine, kids can't sit still. Or is the problem that the materials aren't accessible? Or is the problem that the teacher can't manage the classroom? There are lots of possible problems, and we need to know what the problem is before we can find the solution.
Carlton, we have a question from Becca Weber.
Excellent.
Hello. So I'm actually not a parent. I am also a blind student studying to be a teacher of the visually impaired. And my question is do you think it's valuable to receive both a TVI certification and a teacher of blind students certification, just to get both of those perspectives? You know, you have the vision perspective and you have the kind of like blind.
Yeah, there really aren't two certifications. There are multiple universities that provide training. I will say Louisiana Tech does, from what I can tell, the far and away the best Braille training in the nation, but your certification is going to come from your state. My certification in Pennsylvania is that I am certified special ed of students for visual impairment newborn to 21. My degree says I have an MED in visually and multiply impaired students. That's what it says. I identify as a TBS, teacher of blind students, because that is, I don't look at a child's vision, I look at a child. And that is just so core to me. So it's not an either or. Unfortunately, most people who are traditionally trained, many people, I shouldn't say most, that's probably not fair. Many folks who are traditionally trained don't have authentic and meaningful relationships with blind people. They only teach little short people who don't know how to read yet. Well, blind adults are different. You really need to know what you're aiming for, in my opinion, in order to get there. And many do not get sufficient Braille training, and they get Braille training in an improper way, as far as I'm concerned. So it makes them think Braille is hard and difficult, and that feeds into their instruction. So I would encourage you to look at the child first. Obviously, know the law. Braille is default. A kid who's colorblind with 20/20, guess what? Braille is default. Braille might not be appropriate for that kid, but some tactile markings might be for that colorblind kid. But anyway, but it is still by law default, and that's where we have to go. Does that make sense?
Carlton, we have a question from Daniel Martinez.
Okay. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Carlton, everyone. I'm actually interpreting for the Spanish channel. We have parents, students, and professionals attending in the Spanish. Yesterday, I received a notice of a situation that's happening, and this morning, I received a second situation, and it's basically the same deal. once COVID hit, they lost contact with the teacher of blind students, and they lost therapies. And the parents both report that the children are staying behind. They're I can't say the word. Stagnated, I believe it's the word.
Yeah, that's
yes. That's the situation.
Okay, yeah, this is a real legal thing. The district needs to be called and held to task. Why is the teacher not contacting? I don't care if the teacher moved to Bermuda. I mean, good for him or her, but the school is the one that is responsible, the school district, and and they're responsible to provide these services. And it may be necessary to bring the State Department of Education in as well. I know you're a vibrant part of the NFB of Texas, and accessing their NFB affiliates may be helpful as well. Casey, do you have anything to add?
Well, esa es una situación legal. En realidad, sorry, am I muted? Can you mute me, please?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
let me see. Can somebody mute him? I can't.
I did. Daniel, I would just say that these parents, I strongly urge them to get in contact with the Texas affiliate and let someone go as an advocate to the IEPs and start contacting these school districts for these parents, because it's just as Carlton said, it's a legal issue and it should not be happening. And the longer they wait, the longer their child falls further behind. So please contact that Texas affiliate. And then if they need help, they will reach out to the national office and get these parents some help.
Gail Gruber has a question. Gail?
I don't know much about the IEP thing, but I remembered way back before all of this, when I was told by people, I have some usable sight, and I was told by people, no, you don't need to learn Braille. And I fought for that, and my mother was in my corner. This was before all of this IEP, and to this day, I am so glad I learned it when I did, because otherwise, what would happen? But another question, one more question I have, what exactly is IEP? I've heard it, you know, keep it short, but try to explain it to me in the best way you can without.
Sure, we're bad about our acronyms. IEP is an individualized education program, and it is really the blueprint, the contract between the school and the student and family about what special education services and equipment and supports will be provided to the child. It covers tools, accommodations, modifications, service time, everything.
That helps. Thank you very much.
Calvin has a question. Calvin?
Hi, it's actually Angela. And so I have a 5-year-old rising kindergartner who is a dual media learner, and in general, we've had a good experience with our school district. And my question is also related to distance learning. So distance learning is just really challenging for probably any 5-year-old or most 5-year-olds. And I think Braille in particular has slowed way down. And I just imagine, and I don't know yet if our school district is going to be completely virtual or not. I think we have more or less made the decision not to return in person. So we will be 100% virtual, but, continue with the school district. But given that, is there anything kind of legally or just best practice? I have found, as I think Carlton, you mentioned, I am not the best teacher for my child, both because I am not a teacher and because I'm also her parent. So I'm just curious, kind of like, if there's any legal precedent, like could we, even if we still go virtually, even if our school district is virtual, is there anything where we could still have in person just for Braille support one-on-one with the TVI, or just any suggestions for not, I just don't want to get too far behind with Braille.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I want to do is, first thing we have to do is look at the IEP. What are your child's needs? And it sounds like your child needs to have pretty heavy interaction, because 5-year-olds gonna do. But we also, I would want to make sure that your child has a refreshable Braille display at home, because Braille is so vital. It's so important that she gets both. She's getting her large print, that's fabulous, but she gets instant large print all the time. I would want to make sure that her materials that she's getting are accessible, and that she can use a screen reader ideally, and that she can read things in Braille, and then maybe she can read something in print, and then maybe vice versa. But she'll need her hard copy Braille for her math. That really, what we're really looking at what her IEP needs are, regardless of the placement. And when we develop an IEP, we talked about this yesterday, we look at the student's needs first. And then if there are additional needs because of a certain environment, for instance, some children have exceptional sensory sensitivity, and they need quiet rooms. They might not be able to handle a regular kindergarten classroom. That's an additional student need. I think you're right, most 5-year-olds won't do well via distance. So we need to work out some additional needs. With regard to getting somebody on site, that's a negotiation. You can't force that, but you can force the district to do what is necessary for your child. And maybe it's an additional adult online. Maybe it's somebody they hire to come in. And maybe they're willing to hire somebody to come in. It's a negotiation. Casey?
I would just say it is a negotiation. It's something worth asking for, because, you know, we talk about distant learning, and we've talked a lot about distant learning, but just like you're saying, for a 5-year-old, it's very difficult. Also, if they have not had any Braille instruction, or they're very young in their Braille instruction, in placing their hands and things like that, it's very difficult to teach them online. So I would definitely ask, could there be one thing that we worked out with a school district for one child is, instead of going to a classroom, he will go to a central office room that they use only for him, and the parent or whomever will take the child to that central location, where it's just the teacher and the child. That's it. Nobody else enters that room, and they do Braille instruction, and then the child leaves. So that could be a possibility you could ask them for. Instead of somebody coming into your house, could you meet them at a central office, a district location, for that Braille instruction? But it's definitely something worth asking for.
And if you need that transportation, note that transportation can be provided for in the IEP. And in that case, the district is going to pay mom for mileage and time for the travel. If you can't do that, that may be something the teacher may need to pick the kid up. I think that's silly at that point, but whatever. But you might need to provide for transportation if you, as a parent, can't do it, because you might be working, you might be caring for other children or other family members. It's a school's job.
And mom, don't feel guilty about not being able to sit with your child and do the lessons. I'm a teacher. I teach Braille. I work with not thousands, but I work with kids all over the country, but I have somebody else teaching my child Braille, because me as mom cannot get out of her what other teachers can get out of her. So never feel guilty about asking the school district for that person. You are not responsible for doing that.
Great, thank you so much.
Jeanette Jones is next. Jeanette?
Okay. Oops. Hello? I can hear you. You guys can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I got a pop-up that said your host will not allow you to unmute when I unmuted. So, okay. So my question is, my son's school district does not have their own designated TVI. They use TVIs from the county. And something happened this last year. I was notified that all the county TVIs left. So they had to hire new TVIs, and I was informed that they didn't actually hire TVIs. They hired a teacher that has special ed experience, but no Braille experience at all, no knowledge of it at all. And can you guys give me an idea of how I can proceed with that? Because I'm really concerned that my son and the other students in the district are not going to get the right kind of support from a teacher that doesn't specialize in doing that.
Well, there are a couple of ways to attack it. One, what does your state require for certification for teaching? They may or may not have a requirement. For Braille teachers, they may have emergency certification that allows the person to teach legally.
Right.
And that would be the first thing to do. And then I think you really want to make a civil rights argument. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that public services like the schools cannot discriminate on basis of disability. If they are having sighted students learn print from people who know print, and blind students learn Braille from people who don't know Braille,
right,
that seems pretty discriminatory to me.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Casey, do you have any?
No, I think that would be the exact thing, and that is the sad part, is a lot of the states do not have Braille requirements or do not have requirements for their teachers of the visually impaired. So you have to fight that argument first, and it would be interesting to look and see if your state has a Braille bill and what that Braille bill requires as well. So you would look at what they require of the teacher if your state has a Braille bill, and in the immediate, because there is fire on the ground, you want to do a Office of Civil Rights conversation with them because of the discrimination of, like Carlton talked. But in the long term, you might want to work with your affiliate about a Braille bill and certification requirements for your teachers. So that's the NFB long-term look that we're looking at, but because there's fire on the ground right now, I would definitely talk to them about an Office of Civil Rights.
Yeah, and U.S. Office of Civil Rights, your state Human Relations Commission, if you have one of those, and your state Department of Ed complaint.
Okay.
All three. Throw it all up.
Got it. Thank you.
Carlson, it looks like we have two more questions. Okay. The first is from Caitlin Hands. Caitlin?
Hey, Carlson, this is Ken Quinn. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Kind of two questions here. Why, if there is better modes of testing versus the learning media assessment, why is that still being taught to upcoming teachers of visually impaired, number one? And then number two, in cases where you have school districts that are, say, supplying Braille displays, but then they're saying you can't take it home because this was purchased through quota funds, so it has to stay here at the school. And then the state blindness agency has to purchase another Braille display for you to use at home.
Okay, well, the first one, I can't tell you why the university personnel programs choose what they choose. I'm disappointed in them, to be very frank, because they're choosing an antiquated and inefficient assessment that uses the wrong criteria. It's just really bad in a lot of ways. I can't go into other people's motives, so I don't know. I would love for them to see, I hate to use this one, but see the light and understand that we need to focus on the students, not on eyes. With regard to the second one, that's just bunk. Federal quota monies are provided to states by the federal government, and the equipment either, depending on what the state does, becomes property of the State Department of Education or of the school district. So things about federal quota money items can't be brought home as goofy. And the other thing is, it's where it comes from is one of those, that's not my problem. My problem is I know that this student needs tool X to come home every day. I don't care where the school gets the money. I don't care if the school has one device at home and one device at school, fabulous. If they want the child to take it back and forth, fabulous. If they want to get money from a Lions Club, from federal quota, from their athletic department, largesse, whatever, it's great. That's not my business. I don't have the right to tell them that. I have the right to tell them the IEP team has determined that this child needs X equipment at home and overbrates to receive FAPE. That's that. Make it happen. However you wish to make it happen, I'll try to give you solutions, but we're looking for solutions, not excuses.
Mm-hmm. I guess my problem is, oh, well, they have this at the school, so they can use it at the school. Well, then how do you expect them to do the homework? And that kind of seems to be where the disconnect comes. And they go, well, the state blindness agency can purchase it for them.
Well, yeah, and so that's
why is there the need? That's like,
well, but it's because
money twice and they already have the use of it.
Yeah, Ken, this is an IEP team decision, and it's a question that needs to be brought before the IEP team, and it needs to be documented that the child needs the equipment at home in order to receive free appropriate public education, maybe for homework, maybe for recreational reading and writing, maybe just to keep up skills in using the equipment, whatever. It's needed for FAPE. It's in the IEP that it comes home. The IDEA, special ed law, regulations, federal regulations are clear. If the IEP team determines that it's needed for FAPE, it must be provided outside the school, at home, and in the community. However they want to do it, buy 2 devices, fabulous. 1, moving, fabulous.
And then also just an additional comment to my first question about the universities. These universities are being vetted by AER.
Yeah.
Carlton, we had a question in the chat box from Jim. Jim, could you unmute yourself? I'm going to go ahead and move on to Juan Ortez.
Hello, good morning. Well,
morning.
Over here, good morning. I don't know over there. Well, I work as a vocational counselor for the Bureau of the Blind in Chicago, and I deal mostly with high school students. And sometimes I do go, because my goal is to prepare them for college or employment. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I go to those meetings, and it's beautiful when I see one of the students that knows about the IEP, and he can advocate for himself or herself. And then when they go to college, they know that they have to advocate for them and go to the disability department so they can also ask for accommodations. And it's a beautiful thing. But what I notice most of the time, that's just a fraction. But what I notice most of the time is that even students that are being blind since birth in first grade and that, you can still see parents intimidated. The student doesn't know what's going on in those IEPs. They just know, they just sit there and they just sign it and keep going. I guess my suggestion is that I believe that when they already know that the student, let's say it's in first grade, and they know that the student is legally blind, is going to need services, I believe the parents should be told that there are resources in the community where they can learn how the process of the IEP, due process, all those things that they had to learn. Because, I mean, they got to realize they're going to have an IEP for 12 years. So I do believe as soon as possible, those parents should be educated. And I think that's going to eliminate the being intimidated when they go to the meeting. And I am so happy that you put Penny Duffy in the conference, because we can talk here somebody who is a parent. You guys did excellent. So, but I always believe that they should be, I don't know if they should write it on the IEP, make it mandated that once they have an IEP, the school is mandated to provide those resources, because I know they are. I used to go with some student and they would teach them the whole process, the parents, and they would learn the whole process when they need whatever, the compensatory thing that we talked about yesterday, or they need a device and they say, I don't have it. Well, that's your responsibility. It's in the IEP. And once they get educated, but I guess because we have a lawyer, I wondered how much you can force this where it had to be, because you know how it is. Sometimes they go to the IEP, they say, you can bring somebody from the community, you can bring this and that. They don't, most of the time, they don't explain anything like that. They just make them sign. And it's very powerful. The parents and the student are, well, and especially also the student, because remember, he's going to go to college, and then he got to advocate when he go to college too. So this is also would be a great learning experience for him to prepare him for college or employment or anything that he wanted to.
Juan, that's great. And I'll just say also that we have a great affiliate in Chicago, in Illinois, NFB of Illinois, some amazing advocates there. Also, and we have affiliates in every state in the nation. Yet knowledge is absolutely power. So spread the news about the NFB and the NOPBC. We're proud division of the NFB to get the word out. Oh, and just so you know, Casey and I are both parents of blind children too. So I agree, and so is Melissa. So all four speakers today are parents of blind children.
Okay.
So just
I would go a step further with that one. In the ECC, the expanded core curriculum, there is a section for self-advocacy, and you could very well write goals into that IEP that the students learn the IEP process and learn how to self-advocate. But I would use the local affiliate, the NFB affiliate, to possibly do some workshops with your families and your kids. If you could get them to come to one location, and then have an NFB affiliate come in and talk about the IEP process and what they need to know, and teach them about the IEP.
Okay. And I just want to make another point. This is the first time that I've been in going to the conference at the NFB, and it's been an amazing experience. I mean, you guys are doing an amazing. I think the bureau chief from Illinois made us do this, and I'm gonna thank him because it's been an amazing experience. And I have listened to so many conferences, and I can tell you that yours is the best I ever heard, and it's so amazing what you guys are doing.
Erica, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Jim, you're on now.
Thank you very much. I'm Jim East. I'm from Gainesville, Florida. This is my first conference, and I want to echo first what the previous gentleman said. This has been an awesome experience. Thank you for doing this. A little bit about me. I'm a former retired counselor for our state agency for the blind, the Florida Division of Blind Services. Some states, as you all may know, have agencies that are combined. Some have specific agencies for people with disabilities. My background was transition in college. So my question is, and I'm going to say both this question and the comment, and then I'll shut up. Are IEPs happening now? Number one, if they're not, they should. And secondly, the comment that I would like to make is that, you know, the school system has their responsibility, and the blindness agency and or the community rehab center, rehab facility are two different animals or objects that can help your child. So the student can use the services and equipment provided not during school hours or to support the work they're doing during school hours, but there's a line there that needs to be respected so that you get the biggest bang from your buck for both organizations. But as a blind student, I had both typewriters and braillers at home and at school. But I would encourage you to link up with your blindness agency, even those that have children's programs like ours does here, and also get a really good IEP advocate. I will say that I volunteer to do things like this all the time. So, if anyone wants my information, they can reach out to me later. But y'all are doing a great job. I know it's hard, but I think that IEPs need to be happening now and should have started some time ago if they weren't, because everybody is under a different situation. And remember, the golden rule with IEPs is least restrictive environment. So I hope that helped.
Thank you very much.
Jim, this is Kimberly Banks. Could you post your email in the chat? I'm the vice president of the Florida Parents of Blind Children, and we definitely need more advocates at IEPs for parents. So
I will certainly do that. I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
If it's a Zoom meeting, and I encourage that they have those too, that, obviously I'm in Gainesville, but I could attend anywhere, but I'm comfortable with the state of Florida. But IDEA, I'm a CRC, Certified Rehab Counselor, so IDEA is really pretty consistent. So I'll do that now. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any more questions. So
I think this would be a good place for us to stop then. This has been great. So many wonderful, wonderful questions. We can give you a base knowledge, but every person has an individual situation, and it's really good to be able to answer questions that you guys have. And Crofton, is there anything else before we go?
Nope. Thank you so much. Please don't hesitate to find us on Facebook. We're the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children. It's a private group. We'd love to have you. We do have some questions because we are really pretty tight about keeping spammers out. So it's a good place to go. And please find us our website that is, we just have a fabulous team headed by Penny Duffy, one of our speakers today, with putting information on our website, which will include recordations of our sessions, including this one at www.nopbc.org. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to keeping our relationship building over the forthcoming weeks, months, and years. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.